1458. Gonzaga had a very handsome nephew, Evangelista, who was stricken with a serious illness that left him deformed. To support her thesis, Ehrenberg-Lavin pointed to the frescoes in the marriage chamber at Mantua, where Andrea Mantegna had painted Ludovico Gonzaga and a blonde, curly-headed youth. According to her, Ubaldini may have commissioned the painting to commemorate the double mourning of the two friends. The painting would have hung in the tiny oratory located a few yards from the studiolo of the Duke da Montefeltro. The Briton, Ronald Lightbone, believed the man at left to be a Byzantine envoy and the man at right to be Francesco Sforza. In his interpretation, the envoy is begging Duke Sforza, a great Christian prince, to undertake a crusade against the Turks. Lightbone based his identification on portraits of Sforza and on the fact that blue was the Sforza family color, as indicated by the livery of Ludovico the Moor, shown in the Sforzesca altarpiece. The ethereal youth in the center would be the Archangel Raphael, a divine envoy sent to oversee this important transaction. For the Italian historian Carlo Ginzburg, the key to the mystery was identification of the painter's sponsor. He suggested Giovanni Bacci, patron of the Arezzo frescoes, who was painted along with several of his family members in the scene depicting the decapitation of Khosros. To prove that the man at right was a real person, Ginzburg pointed to Piero's correction of the skull's shape, a change similar to one the artist had previously made to one of the devout at the feet of the Virgin of the Misericordia. Thus, the man at right could have been the individual in the Battle of Khosros, or perhaps a participant in the meeting between Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Ginzburg identified the man at left as John Bessarion, prelate of the Greek Church. Bessarion fought for reunification of the two churches, defended the project of a crusade against the Turks, and was made a cardinal of the Catholic Church by the Pope. According to Ginzburg, the painting commemorated the moment when Giovanni Bacci, then a papal legate, delivered the red scarf of cardinal to Bessarion. Draped over Bacci's right shoulder, the scarf fell to the top of his ankles. The youth in the middle was identified as Buonconte da Montefeltro, the natural son of Federico, whom he legitimized in 1454, but who died from the plague in 1458 at the age of 17. According to Ginzburg, shortly after the youth's death, Bessarion could have sent the painting to his friend Federico via the intermediary Bacci in order to persuade Federico to undertake a crusade. Depicted as a young man, Bessarion evokes the martyr of the Eastern Church and convokes the image of the dead son. The former is identified with the flagellated Christ, and Federico's grief is compared to that of the Church. A widower with no children, Federico married Battista Sforza. She bore 7 daughters before giving Federico the male heir he longed for, Guidobaldo, in 1472. She died in childbirth at the exact moment that Federico won one of his most illustrious victories. Piero commemorated the story in his greatest painting. Guidobaldo had the best teachers, and the court of Urbino became one of the most brilliant intellectual centers in Italy. By this time, the notion of a crusade belonged to a bygone era. Even at court, the flagellation of Christ had become more appreciated for its formal qualities and esoteric implications than for its political content. Piero was both an artisan and a scholar. He familiarized himself with instruments used by cartographers, surveyors, and architects: compass, plumb line, protractor, as well as theodolit, alidade, astrolabe. He knew how to reference an object's location and dimensions within a given space. He learned from Florentine architects that mathematics was learning par excellence. Everyone venerated Euclid, who was among the great men hanging in the picture gallery of Federico da Montefeltro. In turn, Euclid would be the reference for the mathematician Luca Pacioli, Piero's follower and the tutor of Federico's son, Guidobaldo. The painting is 59 centimeters high, which is the length of a braccio, the unit of Tuscan measurement most common at that time. The braccio was supposedly the length of an arm. It was believed that a man's ideal height was equal to 3 braccia. Piero made his painting a rectangle. He built it using a compass, deriving length from the diagonal of a square built on the height. The diagonal of a square had been the object of numerous speculations since antiquity. By applying the theory of Pythagoras to a square side of 1, Greek mathematicians discovered they could find a number which multiplied by itself would give exactly 2. One such number, designated as the square root of 2, had been qualified as inexpressible. Called irrational in the Middle Ages, it was considered to possess mystical qualities. The square built on this height equal to a braccio is the figure at the base of the painting. It delineates exactly the point where the band of white marble cuts the edge of the frame. The diagonal is fundamental. Piero placed his vanishing point there and aligned the edge of the span of the ceiling along the cornices to the background door. In the exact middle of the diagonal, Piero placed Christ's column. The lines of the pavement and those of the buildings converge toward a point located on the marble panel in the background to the right of the torturer. This vanishing point is placed on the median of the rectangle at equal distance from the 2 upper angles of the painting. And on the same line a little higher, there where the diagonals of the rectangle cross, which is to say in the very center of the painting, Piero painted the torturer's hand. The horizontal line marks the height of the painter's eye, say 17.8 centimeters above the lower edge of the picture. It's also the height of the figure of Christ, who would have served as the model for several objects of people in the picture. Tradition has it that Christ was 1 meter, 78 centimeters tall. Thus, Piero drew him 1/10 of his actual height. The interior space of the loggia is placed in a homologous square of the first. In the same way, the people in the flagellation are positioned in a rectangle whose proportions are identical to those of the painting. All these combinations of lines and polygons